The morning sun wove gentle patterns across the hardwood floors of Studio A at the Pacific Northwest Ballet Academy. There, beneath the mirrored wall and beside the bar, stood Elena Cho, 26, tall and lithe, but carrying a tension in her shoulders that ballet training alone couldn't explain. By day, she was a software engineer at a venture-backed tech startup in Seattle's South Lake Union district. Her cubicle, adorned with a single porcelain swan, a nod to her hidden passion, hid the fact that until midnight she would be teaching herself variation after variation in grand jeté and fouette. Elena's parents, first-generation Korean immigrants, had made enormous sacrifices when they came to the U.S. They taught her the value of discipline and perseverance, values they equated with STEM success. Their expectations were clear: medicine, engineering, law, something solid, respectable. And so, when Elena came home with acceptance to UTC's computer science program, the pride in their eyes eclipsed everything else. Yet every evening she would remove her engineering textbooks from her backpack, slip on dance tights, lace up point shoes, and retreat to the studio basement, just her and the echo of her own breaths, as she practiced choreography meant for stages far bigger than any corporate presentation she'd ever give. Each plie and arabesque freed her in ways no line of code ever could. But she understood, even then, that this duality came with a tension she didn't dare voice. The ballerina inside her felt a desperate longing to be recognized, to be seen not as the good immigrant girl who toiled 12-hour days debugging JavaScript, but as someone who stole beauty and defiance from each supple extension of her spine. One meaningful evening stands out. It was her 24th birthday. She had stayed late at work, finishing an intricate feature for the company's new product, her eyes bleary. But at 9 p.m., she phoned her ballet teacher, whispered, "I'll be there soon," and jogged to the studio, heart pounding with exhaustion and excitement. There, under the single spotlight in Studio B, she ran through a 32-count sequence she'd choreographed for her senior recital. Her muscles trembled, sweat blurred the edges of the polished floor. In that moment, as she leapt into a grand jeté across the space she'd cleaned after class, she felt a surge, a rare crescendo where engineering precision and artistic flight collided. She landed, heart pounding, chest tight, tears stinging. She had done it. Against exhaustion, against her own voice whispering that she didn't have time for this. She dared to exceed her limits, and that's when she realized something. She wasn't just balancing ballet and engineering. She was forging a new path. That singular memory, she'd later recorded in her journal, is so vivid. The echo of her point shoes, the fire in her bones, the silence of late-night Seattle broken only by her exhale. In that stillness, Elena became aware that she was living two lives. But she also knew there couldn't always be a separation. One must inform the other. One must, in fact, justify the other. And she commanded herself, "Don't hide. Integrate." The mechanical hum of the engineering lab reverberated under the industrial skylights. Elena stood behind her poster board presentation, diagrams, flowcharts, code snippets, rehearsing her delivery one last time. It was senior showcase day at the University of Washington's engineering department, and students clustered around CNC machines and 3D printers, ready to spotlight innovations in robotics, AI, and renewable energy. Dressed in a tailored blazer over her blouse, dark trousers pressed, and her Raven's 12th grade graduate shoes polished, Elena looked the part. Her heart thudded, not from nerves about her neural network project, but from something deeper. She'd promised her parents she'd lead with STEM today. She'd prepared every slide, every statistic, anticipating questions on dataset bias and model optimization. Her code, she believed, could make a difference in medical diagnostics. But that still, nagging flame, her ballet life, beckoned. Her fingers brushed the satin ribbon in her pocket, the hem from her costume neatly folded. She'd practiced this in secret. Today, hidden beneath her engineering jacket, she carried the final piece of a plan that either would define her or dissolve her entirely. The faculty reviewers started making their rounds. A mechanical engineering professor paused, brows raised. "Beautiful data work, Miss Cho. I'm impressed." "Thank you, Professor Nguyen." I'd be happy to explain how I incorporated attention mechanisms to handle edge case anomalies. Elena began, but the words felt mechanically hollow. Across the room, chatter buzzed as booths turned. The head of computer science whispered to her peers about neural nets for radiology. Near the entrance, a hush settled. Everyone, students, professors, even curious passers-by, turned to see Elena. She'd stepped away from her station. She walked slowly through the maze of equipment. In her mind, she replayed the memory of her birthday night. That single jeté under the spotlight, the liberation of her own body defying exhaustion. She remembered her teacher's quiet applause, not because it was flawless, but because it was real. And something inside her snapped. Reaching the center of the floor, she unbuttoned her jacket. Then, a slow reveal, as technicians paused and jaws dropped, she slipped it off, exposing her pale peach camisole leotard and tights. The satin point ribbons on her shoes gleamed under the fluorescent lights. A hush. Eyes widened. Professors stiffened. Families blinked. Elena's pulse thundered so loudly she thought microphones might pick it up. She inhaled deeply, letting the silence stretch. Then music, soft, a piano melody she'd composed herself, played live by her roommate at a corner keyboard stationed near her poster. The first note rang clear, delicate, then insistent. Elena's back straightened, her arms lifted, and she began. Attendu to the right foot, toes brushing the vinyl floor. Then a slow port de bras, her arms painting invisible arcs in the sterile air. The code-filled screens became mere backdrop. What mattered was movement. In this choreography, every extension spoke. Her left leg swung into attitude, her shoulders dropped into arabesque. She felt eyes burning into her back, but didn't break focus. She held the narrative, a young engineer, cloaked in corporate expectations, casting aside her safety gear to expose her soul. Each ply felt triumphant. Each grand jeté, though tiny, felt seismic. She imagined a real stage, but knew this moment was more powerful because here, in this coliseum of STEM, she was reclaiming her identity. The final crescendo arrived. A series of fouettes, precise, each rotation controlling her spine like the backbone of her two worlds. Her balance wavered at the eighth turn, knee brushing the floor. She whipped into a final pose, front foot tapered, back leg in l'air, arms lifted like wings toward the skylight. She held it. The music stopped. Silence awaited. Her heart pounded. Sweat beaded at her temples. Then a solitary clap, gradually joined by another and another, until the room was filled with applause. Some spontaneous whistles, some cheers. A professor who'd scoffed just minutes ago now stood, slow clapping, eyes misted. Students filmed from corners, sharing glances. This was bigger than code. Elena, trembling, didn't smile. She bowed from the waist, a dancer's bow, not an engineer's nod, and retrieved her jacket from the floor. She buttoned it carefully, smoothing her clothes, breathing in short, even breaths. Then she returned to her station. The crowd shifted, murmurs of astonishment punctuating their words. Did she just deliver a ballet performance during a tech showcase? That was genius. She just merged engineering and art in real time. A few moments later, a hush returned. A professor stepped forward, microphone in hand, lifting it to the overhead PA. She just demonstrated what we've always said: engineering isn't just about machines, it's about humanity. Ms. Cho, may we hear your presentation now? Elena nodded, voice steady but soft. She spoke of her neural network model that detected melanoma in skin images. She explained data preprocessing, precision, recall trade-offs, deployment considerations. And through it all, she carried the spark of her dance, the rhythm of her words, the poise in her posture, the light in her eyes. At the end, applause again, not merely polite, but genuine awe. Students leaned in, professors congratulated her, and for the first time, she sensed she'd earned respect not despite her ballet, but because she embodied it. Afterward, her parents appeared, silent, faces unreadable. Her mother's eyes betrayed something new, wonder. Her father finally brought a hand to her shoulder. No words, but it was enough. Later, in the evening hush of her dorm room, Elena recorded in her journal. Tonight, I didn't hide. I didn't fit. I belonged. That moment, removing the jacket, performing under fluorescence, was her turning point. She fused her worlds, in defiance and in alignment. It altered perceptions. Hers, theirs, her own. The mechanical hum of the engineering lab reverberated under the industrial skylights. Elena stood behind her poster board presentation, diagrams, flowcharts, code snippets, rehearsing her delivery one last time. It was senior showcase day at the University of Washington's engineering department, and students clustered around CNC machines and 3D printers, ready to spotlight innovations in robotics, AI, and renewable energy. Dressed in a tailored blazer over her blouse, dark trousers pressed, and her Raven's 12th grade graduate shoes polished, Elena looked the part. Her heart thudded, not from nerves about her neural network project, but from something deeper. She'd promised her parents she'd lead with STEM today. She'd prepared every slide, every statistic, anticipating questions on dataset bias and model optimization. Her code, she believed, could make a difference in medical diagnostics. But that still, nagging flame, her ballet life, beckoned. Her fingers brushed the satin ribbon in her pocket, the hem from her costume neatly folded. She'd practiced this in secret. Today, hidden beneath her engineering jacket, she carried the final piece of a plan that either would define her or dissolve her entirely. The faculty reviewers started making their rounds. A mechanical engineering professor paused, brows raised. "Beautiful data work, Miss Cho. I'm impressed." "Thank you, Professor Nguyen. I'd be happy to explain how I incorporated attention mechanisms to handle edge case anomalies." Elena began, but the words felt mechanically hollow. Across the room, chatter buzzed as booths turned. The head of computer science whispered to her peers about neural nets for radiology. Near the entrance, a hush settled. Everyone, students, professors, even curious passers-by, turned to see Elena. She'd stepped away from her station. She walked slowly through the maze of equipment. In her mind, she replayed the memory of her birthday night, that single jeté under the spotlight, the liberation of her own body defying exhaustion. She remembered her teacher's quiet applause, not because it was flawless, but because it was real. And something inside her snapped. Reaching the center of the floor, she unbuttoned her jacket. Then, a slow reveal, as technicians paused and jaws dropped, she slipped it off, exposing her pale peach camisole leotard and tights. The satin point ribbons on her shoes gleamed under the fluorescent lights. A hush. Eyes widened. Professors stiffened. Families blinked. Elena's pulse thundered so loudly she thought microphones might pick it up. She inhaled deeply, letting the silence stretch. Then music, soft, a piano melody she'd composed herself, played live by her roommate at a corner keyboard stationed near her poster. The first note rang clear, delicate, then insistent. Elena's back straightened, her arms lifted, and she began. Attendu to the right foot, toes brushing the vinyl floor. Then a slow port de bras, her arms painting invisible arcs in the sterile air. The code-filled screens became mere backdrop. What mattered was movement. In this choreography, every extension spoke. Her left leg swung into attitude, her shoulders dropped into arabesque. She felt eyes burning into her back, but didn't break focus. She held the narrative, a young engineer, cloaked in corporate expectations, casting aside her safety gear to expose her soul. Each ply felt triumphant. Each grand jeté, though tiny, felt seismic. She imagined a real stage, but knew this moment was more powerful because here, in this coliseum of STEM, she was reclaiming her identity. The final crescendo arrived. A series of fouettes, precise, each rotation controlling her spine like the backbone of her two worlds. Her balance wavered at the 8th turn, knee brushing the floor. She whipped into a final pose, front foot tapered, back leg in L-air, arms lifted like wings toward the skylight. She held it. The music stopped. Silence awaited. Her heart pounded. Sweat beaded at her temples. Then a solitary clap, gradually joined by another and another, until the room was filled with applause. Some spontaneous whistles, some cheers. A professor who'd scoffed just minutes ago now stood, slow clapping, eyes misted. Students filmed from corners, sharing glances. This was bigger than code. Elena, trembling, didn't smile. She bowed from the waist, a dancer's bow, not an engineer's nod, and retrieved her jacket from the floor. She buttoned it carefully, smoothing her clothes, breathing in short, even breaths. Then she returned to her station. The crowd shifted, murmurs of astonishment punctuating their words. Did she just deliver a ballet performance during a tech showcase? That was genius. She just merged engineering and art in real time. A few moments later, a hush returned. A professor stepped forward, microphone in hand, lifting it to the overhead PA. She just demonstrated what we've always said: engineering isn't just about machines, it's about humanity. Ms. Cho, may we hear your presentation now? Elena nodded, voice steady but soft. She spoke of her neural network model that detected melanoma in skin images. She explained data preprocessing, precision, recall trade-offs, deployment considerations. And through it all, she carried the spark of her dance, the rhythm of her words, the poise in her posture, the light in her eyes. At the end, applause again, not merely polite, but genuine awe. Students leaned in, professors congratulated her, and for the first time, she sensed she'd earned respect not despite her ballet, but because she embodied it. Afterward, her parents appeared, silent, faces unreadable. Her mother's eyes betrayed something new, wonder. Her father finally brought a hand to her shoulder. No words, but it was enough. Later, in the evening hush of her dorm room, Elena recorded in her journal. Tonight, I didn't hide. I didn't fit. I belonged. That moment, removing the jacket, performing under fluorescence, was her turning point. She fused her worlds, in defiance and in alignment. It altered perceptions. Hers, theirs, her own. Lights in the showcase hall dimmed to a focused beam, casting a spotlight dead center on Elena Cho. She stood alone, heart pounding, terrified, exhilarated, utterly exposed. In that moment, time seemed to slow. The mechanical din of the machines faded, replaced by the rhythmic thump of her own pulse. Her toes gripped the floor, her shoulders shook just slightly under her tailored blazer. She felt small, and finally she was free. Silence stretched for a heartbeat longer than felt natural. Then, with a trembling hand, she pulled open her jacket. The crisp navy blazer peeled away, revealing a soft peach camisole of a ballet leotard, something she hadn't worn in public for over a decade. Your typical American university stage, lined with code posters and tech jargon, transformed in an instant into her intimate world of dance. Elena's parents, sitting in the audience's premium seats reserved for family, sat forward in stunned silence. Her mother's lipstick-streaked smile froze, eyelash-batted surprise locking her gaze. Her father's jaw clenched, disbelief etched sharply against his suit. They'd believed Elena to be the perfect engineer, sealed away from any frivolous hobbies. Ballet had been her secret sanctuary, a place she whispered to herself in the dead of night while coding. They never knew she spent 10 years at the Seattle Ballet Academy, learning fouettes and arabesques under fluorescent studio lights at dawn. The revelation hit them like two halves of a shattered mirror. Elena took a steadying breath. In her mind, she traced that pivotal memory, the night she performed in an amateur recital, nude lights revealing every tremor in her body, the whispered rush of affirmation when her teacher applauded. She closed her eyes and gathered that courage, that liberated root of identity. Soft piano notes began, a scale that echoed the melody of her personal journey, played discreetly from a corner keyboard by her roommate. The music filtered across the hall like an awakening mist. Elena aligned her spine, now exposed not only to the public eye, but to herself. Her first ply was small, almost tentative, but precise. She stretched into a tendu, feeling toe to floor, ankle to leg, ankle to line. The audience gasped. A halo of machines blurred behind her as she glided. The stool of her tech poster became a mere backdrop. A student whispered, "Is she actually dancing ballet?" Elena's expression didn't falter. She let the music carry her into a slow develop, leg lifting with grace until it hovered in midair. If it had been the polished stage at McCaw Hall, maybe she would have been cautious. Here, in the fluorescent hum of the engineering building, she was bold. Her mother's chest tightened. She looked at her husband, incredulous. Was their daughter the product of their STEM-driven expectations, or something far more complex? Her hands clenched, lips parting as she watched, fear and pride warring in her gaze. Elena moved into pirouettes, controlled spins that reflected years of midnight rehearsals and silent determination. Around spin 4, her balance quivered, a testament to human fragility, but she held her pose. A perfect arabesque, foot arched, arms lifted as though catching sunlight. A hush thrummed across the room. Even her father leaned forward, eyes narrowed in concentration. He hadn't just sent her to coding camps and robotics workshops. He believed he was sculpting a product, an engineer, problem solver. Now he watched an artist, refined and real. The realization stirred something deep, maybe doubt, but maybe awe too. Elena remembered her 13-year-old self, sitting in her small mirror-lit room in Redmond, balancing the memory of her first pirouette with satisfaction and blame. Her parents had frowned at every recital, admonishing her to focus on math, physics, real future careers. She closed her eyes, letting the shine of that childhood memory energize her final moment. She swept into a slow camber, her arms tracing the curve of her spine as though carving out space for herself. She breathed out, chin lifting, eyes seeking her parents. She held that final attitude, torso forward, leg extended behind, arms sculpting elegance in a room built for equations. The piano fell silent. The final chord reverberated. For a breath, there was no sound. Then, like a dam breaking, they clapped. Soft hand rubs became thunderous bounds of applause. Whistles, cheers, a crescendo of appreciation that thundered through tech displays and lecture hall benches. Elena bowed, head low, heart high. She picked up her jacket, buttoned it with purpose, smoothing the sleeves like she was sealing what she'd revealed, engineering and ballet, identity and art, all fused. She walked back to her station with a steady step. The world looked different now. Audience members examined her reveals with curious smiles. Professors nudged their colleagues. Parents wiped tears. Classmates whispered admiration. The department chair gave her a thumbs up. Her mother sat, tears glimmering on her lashes. Her father's stiff frame relaxed. He dabbed at his eye with a napkin, emotion wrestling pride. Later, in hushed elevator light, her mother caught her as she exited behind her project board. "Elena, I didn't know," she whispered. Elena tilted her head, brushing hair behind her ear. "I'm still me," she said softly. "All of me." She saw her father watching from around the corner, shaking his head. Not in reproach this time, but in wonder. And maybe something like hope. Elena's memory of that early ballet recital, performing under studio lights, receiving heartfelt applause, anchored her confidence, allowing her to channel decades of passion into this singular act. It reminds her, and audiences, that true fulfillment comes from honoring your whole self, not just a single expectation. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the cafe window where Elena sat, sipping her usual oat milk latte. The warmth wrapped around her like reassurance, grounding her in a new reality. Her heart still echoed last night's performance, her brave declaration, on that unusual stage. Across from her, Professor Harris, her academic advisor, smiled gently and leaned forward. "That was a remarkable moment, Elena," he said, voice soft and sincere. "I've supervised countless capstone presentations, but I've never seen someone reveal so much of their true self in such an unexpected way." Elena offered a small smile, stirring her drink. Inside, emotions simmered: pride, relief, vulnerability. "It felt risky," she admitted. "In that instant, I saw all the late nights practicing pirouettes in my bedroom, following ballet tutorials on YouTube, and the judgment I feared all lined up behind me." Professor Harris nodded. "Would you share more? Your classmates, your parents, they may need to understand the story behind that moment." Taking a slow breath, Elena relaxed back into her chair. This was part of the journey, letting her layers be seen. It started with YouTube, she confessed. I'd pull up tutorial videos, how to do a proper plie, advanced solo turns for beginners, things like that. I followed every instruction to the letter, practicing in front of my full-length mirror in the dorm's common room after coding marathons. I'd crane my neck to watch the dancer's alignment, mimic each movement, sometimes until past midnight. Her fingers traced the latte cup's rim as memories surfaced. Some nights, I'd hear the whir of the building's HVAC system and think it sounded like an orchestra tuned for performance. In that hush, I'd center myself, back straight, shoulders soft, legs low, plie. Then I'd hold the position, count to 10, release. Over and over. My calves ached. My quads burned. Sometimes I cried from exhaustion, but it felt like I was building something beyond code. Professor Harris leaned in, eyes attentive. How did that translate to your engineering work? Elena's eyes lit up. The two disciplines started feeding each other. Ballet taught me discipline in micro-movements. A single toe placement or core engagement changed the quality of the entire pose. That attention to granular detail carried into my programming. If a semicolon was misplaced or a loop condition slightly off, that code would break the program. I approached bugs like incomplete arms. I debugged with surgical precision, retracing logic like I retraced foot positions. She paused, searching for the right words. More than that, ballet connects to creativity and flow. When I'd choreograph transitions between poses, I felt the narrative arc emerging, soft crescendo, release, new theme. I applied the same to UI/UX work. A smooth animation between menu screens felt like a dance, build tension, resolve smoothly. My peers noticed. They said my prototypes felt intuitive, human. I think I found that through ballet's emotional expression. Professor Harris nodded, impressed. You're bridging STEM with art, finding human-centered patterns in technology. A memory flickered. The night before finals, she coded until 3 a.m., then pulled up a grand Allegro practice for dancers, video before bed. The next day, she debugged her project so efficiently that her teammates joked she slept through perfection. She laughed at the recollection. Yeah, that's exactly it. Later that day, Elena called her parents. The line remained silent until her father's voice cracked. I saw you last night. But I didn't expect that. She took a breath. I wanted you to know why I did it. I didn't just dance. I expressed a truth I carried for years. Ballet gave me something, it gave me freedom. Her father sighed. I always thought engineering was the only real direction. But what I saw in you, courage, vulnerability, confidence, maybe I was wrong. Her mother joined in, voice gentle. We raised you to succeed, to choose stable paths. But a successful life might include more than what we planned for you. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. This acknowledgement, this shift, felt more profound than any public applause. The emotional distance she'd feared was closing. That evening, campus was quiet. Bikes clattered outside the engineering building where Elena had set up a small impromptu workshop in an empty studio. She taped strips of mirror along the far wall, creating a makeshift ballet corner. With dancer's grace, she stepped through plies and tendas softly. Leather dance slippers whispered against concrete. Stretching arms into first and second position, she oriented her lines and her life. A classmate, Daniel, poked his head through the door. He had helped her troubleshoot code modules months ago and had stayed afterward to watch her perform. She paused gracefully and smiled. Hey! He pushed the door fully open. The ballet engineering link, that's brilliant. I never expected it, but it makes so much sense. She gestured, inviting him inside. The harness I made to hold my phone for tutorials, installed on the tripod I repurposed from the lab. I run simulations on biomechanics while practicing. It's experimental, but I love it. Daniel's eyes brightened. You're onto something big, a cross-disciplinary project. Science and art. Elena nodded, thoughtfully placing one foot in front of the other as she demonstrated a ballet walk. I want to explore how biomechanical data from dance can improve wearable tech and help rehabilitate injuries. She grinned. Can I help? Gratitude warmed her chest. Absolutely. Days later, at a departmental showcase, Elena presented her work, a video scanning her moves, charts of muscle engagement, prototypes of a ballet smart sock that measures foot alignment. The audience, a mix of engineers and dancers, watched in fascinated silence. Then, at the back, she spotted her parents. They stood still. Her father's posture softened. Her mother discreetly dabbed tears. From across the room, Professor Harris winked at her. When her talk ended, applause broke out. People lined up to ask questions about her elegant fusion of art and engineering, about the human joy baked into the data. Her mother pressed forward in the crowd. "Your ballet insight into code, it's genius," she whispered, voice thick with pride. Her father squeezed her shoulder. "I see you now, not just as my engineer daughter, but as the artist engineer you truly are." Elena's pulse fluttered. She welcomed their embrace, acceptance at last. That night, Elena returned to her dorm. She paused at her bedroom door and looked at the mirror where ballet photographs were taped behind her laptop. There was the ballet from junior high, the costume, the bright pink tutu. And next to it, a snapshot of her walking graduation stage, sash across gown. She smiled, tracing her reflection. "I'm still me," she murmured. "All of me." Taking a slow, deliberate ply in front of the mirror, she closed her eyes. The world had shifted, not only her parents' perspective but her own. She no longer stood at a crossroads, she embodied both paths. Meaning of this moment. In this scene, Elena's revelation, her journey of secret nightly ballet practice, perseverance using YouTube, and the fusion of art and science, led to genuine acceptance from others and a deeper self-understanding. It shows that embracing your full identity, even hidden parts, can transform how the world, and you, perceive it. 3 days after the campus showcase, Elena woke to a flood of notifications across her dorm room's small desk, emails, Slack pings, LinkedIn invitations, even a tweet thread tagging her whole program showcase video. She rubbed her eyes, blinking at the subject lines still unread. Opportunity from Pixel Drive Studios, invitation, Art in Code project, and join our Unity AR Dance initiative. Her heart raced. Could this really be happening? On tenterhooks, she opened the first email. "Dear Ms. Cho, your presentation on integrating biomechanical data with ballet movement blew us away. We're launching an R&D initiative called Art in Code, which overlays real dancers' motion onto game worlds. We'd like to propose you as our project lead. Would you be open to a virtual meet?" Her breath caught. Pixel Drive Studios, a respected indie game developer based in Seattle known for experimenting with innovative, human-centered game mechanics. When she'd been a child scrolling through YouTube, longing to see dancers animated with greater realism in digital spaces, she'd never dreamed of being invited to help make that future. She reread the email twice, savoring every carefully typed word. Then, on a whim, she picked up her phone. "Victoria, it's Elena." Her best friend from high school answered immediately. "Elena, I saw the video. You were brilliant. What's going on?" Elena's voice trembled with excitement. "Pixel Drive Studios wants to hire me to lead their motion capture project, something called Art in Code." "Holy," Victoria gasped. That's massive. Are you going to do it?" Elena stared at the ceiling. "I'm scared." "Of course," Victoria laughed soft and warm. "But scared isn't bad. This is your dream, melding ballet and code. Don't throw it away." Elena squeezed her eyes shut, recalling her late-night plies, the mirror scan data, the prototype soft socks she'd coded as proof of concept. Victoria's words echoed, "Your dream." Virtual interview, on that afternoon. Her laptop camera lit up at 2 p.m. She sat up straight, breath steadying, wearing a smart sweater and casual sleek bun. 3 on-screen avatars appeared, Pixel Drive's multidisciplinary panel, a female creative director, Layla, a male systems engineer, Javier, and motion capture specialist, Tara. Layla smiled. "Elena, we loved the video. You approached movement and code with intention. We'd love to hear how you envision art and code evolving with a ballet foundation." Elena inhaled. In her mind, she saw dancers' joints mapped onto in-game heroes, hips twisting, shoulders leaning, each motion conveying emotion. She spoke slowly, then with increasing momentum. I grew up dancing in silence, then translated that movement into data. With art in code, we can capture that emotional nuance and embed it not just as animation, but as player empathy. Imagine games that adjust tempo and story beats to reflect a dancer's breath, heart rate, or posture. We can make players feel the choreography. Javier leaned forward. We've never approached motion that way, we usually bake canned animations. But real-time emotional weighting? That's wow. Tara added, your understanding of motion mechanics and visuals is rare. She paused. What team would you need to start? Elena visualized her dream team, a coder, motion capture tech, UX designer, and pitched it. She noticed the panel exchanging excited looks. 30 minutes later, Layla smiled. Elena, we're offering you a 6-month contract to build the prototype. We can't wait to see you run with it. Her eyes brimmed. She pressed her hand to her chest, fighting both disbelief and longing to cry. Tell your parents. That evening, Elena sat at the kitchen table with her parents. Her father poured tea into spun porcelain cups as she rehearsed her speech. She felt the residual buzz of adrenaline from the interview. Mom and Dad exchanged soft glances. Elena placed the coffee-stained laptop open between them. I have news. She clicked back through the email on screen. Art in Code project lead, 6-month contract. They scrolled. Father's brows furrowed, mother's lips parted in surprise. Elena, what exactly is Pixel Drive Studios? Mom asked. Father chimed in, you mean they're paying how much for this? Elena paused, tears threatening. It covers my living expenses, health insurance, a full-time salary competitive with entry-level SWE roles, and it's in Seattle, so I can commute. A hush enveloped them. The door clicked shut as rain began tapping on the window. Her father leaned back. You pursuing dance? She swallowed. We'll combine ballet data with game graphics. I'll code life into movement. Her mom's eyes glistened. I had no idea you never stopped dancing. Tears rolled down Mom's cheeks. Father swallowed and gently nodded. You've made us proud, fulfilling your dream in a way we never imagined. Elena exhaled. A thunderbolt of relief and joy all at once. Prototype in progress. Elena moved to a loft space near Pixel Drive in Ballard. She assembled a lean startup team, 2 programmers, a motion capture tech, and a UX artist. Before month 1 ended, they captured her ballerina arabesque in a studio, spotlight on satin slippers, an emotive extension of her dance pedigree. Then they overlaid that motion onto a digital creature, a guardian spirit in a fantasy realm. They named the demo Soul Step. When she pirouetted, the in-game avatar sparkled, soft foot placement triggered pedals, graceful sweep of arms altered wind patterns in the environment. The team tested with a small gamer group. People cried at the dance sequences, saying they felt something deeper. The phrase they repeated, I never felt a game move like that before. At a small private demo night, Elena stood with the team. A guardian, male, gray-bearded, tried Soul Step and snapped his head toward her. You made that? He asked, eyes shining. It's beautiful. I felt her story. Her heart pounded. That was her ballet, the sacrifice, perseverance, all now reaching hearts through code. A moment to breathe. One late evening, after testing binary motion loops, Elena stood in her apartment's mirrored corner. She breathed in and extended her extended second position arms. Beyond dance, this place had become home for her dream come true. She lingered in that stance as if grounding herself. Her phone buzzed. It was her grandmother's text. We'll watch your demo this weekend. So proud. Beneath it, a voice note. Elena pressed play. Grandma's age-tinged voice came. Elena, sweetheart, you've always danced in my heart. You're doing something brave and real. Keep going. Tears blurred her vision. She raised her arms overhead and paused, fingertips grazing the ceiling's bloom light. Climax at Game Fest Seattle. 3 months later, Pixel Drive set up a demo booth at Game Fest Seattle. Elena wore a sleek launch day dress with her hair braided like a rehearsal bun. The booth's floor was empty before the motion capture session began. Onlookers gathered around as she stepped onto the capture voodoo-lined floor. Mirrored walls reflected dozens, even hundreds, of eyes. She pressed record. A hush fell as she began. Each ballet step played out on a giant screen behind her in real time, a majestic sylph blooming into a digital forest set ablaze by petals. Gasps rose. When the demo ended, the crowd surged forward with applause. Pixel Drive teammates hugged her. Cameras snapped. A reporter asked if she'd leave software to dance full-time. Elena shook her head. I love code, the logic, but ballet taught me purpose. This is both. Later, as she returned home, her father appeared in the booth's final corner. He gave her a tight hug. Not a proud father, but a humbled man. I was wrong, he said, voice catching. I told you to choose safe. But you found a path that's both real and unique. Thank you for teaching me that. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. A silent exchange of love she never asked for, yet it rained down tonight. New doors open. At the post-fest celebration in a brick microbrewery, Game Press, students, and Pixel Drive staff clinked glasses. A Seattle arts critic tapped her shoulder. Your project awakened something artistic in a tech world. Next year's GDC would kill for art in code. Would you consider publishing it, or even bringing it to VR? Elena exhaled again. Looking around at her team's cheering faces, the critics' kind eyes, her parents hugging her, she saw not just achievement, but rippled impact. She lifted her glass. Yes. Yes to everything. They toasted. Audio hummed soft. Heart pounding. She'd found herself in code and dance, and the world was dancing back. In this scene, Elena seizes a pivotal opportunity, invited by an indie game studio to lead a career-defining project that merges artistry and engineering. She navigates a nerve-wracking pitch, confronts parental expectations, prototypes her vision, and publicly validates her work through a major festival climax. It's a quiet awakening and a roaring triumph combined, one dance step that reshaped her entire path. It was a crisp autumn morning when Elena arrived at the Grand Hall for the Tech Meets Art Summit in downtown Seattle. Her chestnut hair was neatly pinned, her outfit a tasteful blend of creative flair and technical polish, a slate gray blazer over a silk burgundy blouse that echoed her ballet costume's warmth. In her clutch, she carried a sleek tablet showing slides and short clips from Art and Code in action. As she passed through the tall glass doors, the ambient hum of registration desks and rushing attendees washed over her. The energy was electric, an intentional crossover of artists and engineers. Banners proclaimed, reimagining movement, rethinking code. Once checked in, she stood before a full-length mirror in the green room, adjusting her blouse. Her reflection looked composed, no trace of the night-long rehearsals she'd done in front of webcams, no sign of the anxiety from her first motion capture demo. She took a deep breath, placing a gentle hand over her heart. This is you. The real you. Soon, a production assistant ushered her toward the stage entry corridor. Glowing footlights guided the way. Behind her, she heard polite applause for the previous speaker, a VR artist. Ahead, she glimpsed the giant screen and two tall microphones. Somewhere beyond that stage sat the audience, crowds of people hungry for inspiration. Moments later, she was there. Spotlights softened as she stepped into the center of the stage. A hush fell. She nearly felt the audience hold its breath along with her. She offered a small, confident smile, nodded to the host, and began. Hello, I'm Elena Cho. 3 years ago, I was balancing two worlds, software engineering by day, ballet by night. At those words, she sensed a ripple across the room. She tapped her tablet. Behind her, the screen flickered to a short montage, her dancing plies, code editor windows, color-coded class schedules, and long subway rides home. The impact was immediate. My passion for ballet wasn't just an escape. It taught me how to think movement, structure, emotion. And my software work taught me logic, efficiency, precision. When Pixel Drive Studios asked me to lead Art and Code, it was the first time those worlds could dance together, literally. She paused and clicked. The screen shifted to a real-time demo of her arabesque-powered game character. The crowd leaned forward. They could almost feel the tilt of the avatar's torso, the subtle grace in its step. Elena's fingers brushed the tablet, bringing up a series of slides summarizing her progress. 200 motion clips captured. 75% player emotional engagement increase. Prototype session tiers reported by 30% of participants. She let it sink in. The data showed that art-informed engineering could transcend novelty. It could resonate. Today, we're not just coding lines of instruction. We're encoding empathy. We're translating dance into digital poetry. And that is infinitely more powerful. Applause met her words. But that wasn't the transformation. It was only preparation for what came next. Shared spotlight with Jeffrey Wong. From stage left, Jeffrey Wong, Pixel Drive's CTO, strode out. Tall, thoughtful, an understated presence in designer sneakers and a tailor-fit suit. The audience's applause deepened as they reflected on his role in developing the core algorithms that powered art in code. He shook Elena's hand, genuine warmth radiating between them. Turning to the crowd, he spoke. Elena's vision challenged everything we thought we knew about motion capture. We had mock choreography labels. She gave us living stories. And now we're launching the next phase, real-time emotional mapping in live gameplay. During that moment, Elena felt an electric alignment with Jeffrey, a shared conviction that tech could serve beauty, not just function. Together, they fielded questions from a moderator about technical scalability, data ethics, creative authenticity, and future iterations. Each answer came natural. They were no longer teacher and student, but collaborators leading a paradigm shift. When the session ended, the applause was roaring. Elena and Jeffrey bowed. "Thank you." She looked at him, smiling. "We're just getting started." Quiet celebration backstage. They stepped backstage into a small reception area, wine, coffee, finger sandwiches, and bubbling networks. A few select attendees immediately gathered around. A renowned UX researcher shook her hand. This work could redefine how players connect with characters. You're building empathy in code, something we study for years. A game studies professor added, "I'd like to collaborate with you on a longitudinal study, capturing player reactions over months. This is groundbreaking." Elena's pulse quickened with excitement. Jeffrey leaned in. "We did this." He squeezed her shoulder. "Your dream became a prototype. Now it's a movement." She exhaled. "And yours too. Without your algorithms, this wouldn't have flown." They laughed softly. It felt true. Email from home. Her tablet received a new email titled, "Congratulations from home." Mom wrote, "Dearest Elena, your father and I watched the session livestream. We cried. Seeing you explain passion and tech together, we had no words but pride. Please forgive our oversight these years. You are extraordinary. We love you." Below, another from Dad. "I need to travel to Seattle. I want to stand in the audience when you speak next." Sophia pressed reply, allowing her forehead to rest against the cold glass table. "Thank you. I'd be honored to have you next time." Reflection in the hotel lobby. Later that evening, Elena returned to her hotel. She took off her heels and walked barefoot across the quiet marble floor. She found a padded bench near a crystal water fountain. She closed her eyes, fingers tracing the original silk of her ballet blouse. 3 years ago, she'd hidden her point shoes under her bed. Tonight, she carried her code-savvy vision across a global stage. She let out a whisper. "I became both." Her phone buzzed. Jeffrey's message, "Dinner tomorrow? We'll toast this." She smiled. "Yes." Climactic moment. A new chapter begins. The following morning, still in her suite's light, she composed her own email to a gaming journal editor. "Dear Sam, thank you for attending yesterday. I'd welcome a feature piece on how art in code is transforming movement representation in games." She paused, reread it, and hit send. Later at breakfast at the hotel's corner cafe, Jeffrey joined her. Over coffee and avocado toast, he passed her his tablet. "I pulled up some early design sketches," he said. I want your input before the coding sprint begins. UI mockups, interactive movement moments. She tapped the screen, excitement blossoming in her chest. She looked around at the morning sunlight bouncing through floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle waking up outside. Transformation completed, new world unfolded. What started as a secret ballet dance in a campus showcase had evolved into a public collision of art and engineering. Elena wasn't just a software engineer now. She was a bridge, an innovator, and a storyteller through motion. Her voice, once quiet, hidden behind lines of code, now carried across auditoriums with purpose. Her hands, once confined to keyboard commands, were now crafting both choreography and software architecture. When the summit closed, she stepped outside onto the echoing hall steps. Below her, attendees of varied backgrounds spilled out, discussing emotional story arcs, coding pipelines, dance aesthetics. And in that crowd, she saw the future, a generation that wouldn't define themselves by binary choices. They'd embrace multiplicity, as she finally had. Jeffrey appeared beside her, offering his arm as they descended. "Ready for the next chapter?" he whispered. She looked ahead with clear eyes. "Absolutely." Core of the transformation. Elena is publicly recognized and invited to speak at a prestigious TechMeets Arts Summit, a milestone achievement. She shares the stage with CTO Jeffrey Wong, positioning her as a thought leader in the intersection of ballet-inspired motion and software innovation. She receives acclaim from peers, UX researchers, academics, industry insiders, all acknowledging the profound impact of her work. Her parents, once doubtful, reach out in pride and regret, signaling deep personal reconciliation. Elena embraces her joined identity, dancer-engineer, ushering forward a new path for art in code and her own calling. The day had arrived. The TechMeets Arts Summit auditorium was packed, hundreds of eyes and smartphones trained on the stage. LED lights traced geometric patterns across the floor, giving the cavernous hall an ethereal, almost theatrical ambience. The air hummed with anticipation. An event several months in the making was about to unfold. Elena Cho stood behind the curtain, heart pounding like a timpani drum. She wore a custom jumpsuit, milky white and stretched to hint at her ballet form, elegant seams carved in pixel-like lines. Her hair was slicked back into a modern bun. No tablet in hand, today her voice and body would speak. She closed her eyes for a moment. "I balance between two worlds. Today they meet." The host introduced her. "Ladies and gentlemen, we present Elena Cho, engineer, dancer, visionary." A swell of applause followed. Elena stepped onto the stage. In her mind, she felt every lecture, every 3 a.m. ballet routine, every denied label merge in this decisive moment. Light softened. A single spotlight illuminated her center stage. The host guided the audience to hush. Elena raised her arms gracefully, palms upward, evoking the opening chords of a minimalist piano piece echoing through speakers. There was no spoken intro. Instead, Elena flowed. Ballet met code in her movement. Her feet traced sine waves, her arms curved in arcs recalling data flow diagrams. Each step was purposeful, a ply mirrored a loop, an arabesque hinted at recursion. The audience watched her transcendence, the dancer-engineer articulating the very soul of her central message. As she twirled, Elena unleashed a line in soft, projected text behind her. "Technology is motion. Art is structure. And I stand at their intersection." Her voice didn't crack, but her voice didn't need to rise above her expression. The silence held her intensity, the pauses between her pirouettes echoed volumes. 2 minutes passed. Then one final pose, knee bent, arms curved overhead, head tilted, still, balanced, complete. Silence. For a heartbeat. Then thunder. The audience erupted. Standing ovations. Clapping, cheering. Some cried. Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks. She held her last position until the applause crescendoed, then bowed deeply. Her ballet past and engineering future danced together in that bow. Afterglow, moments beyond the stage. Backstage, Elena was trembling, euphoria and exhaustion entwined. As team members wrapped her in a warm shawl, She heard footsteps and the host's voice. That finale will be remembered. Moments later, Jeffrey Wong found her. He lifted her shawl, gently touched her shoulder. You moved everyone. That performance, magnificent. They exited through a side door into a long corridor lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city gleamed under late afternoon light. He guided her toward a quiet lounge. Seated across from a plate of tiny cookies and herb tea, he looked at her earnestly. That's your statement, Elena. That's your declaration. You belong in both worlds. She exhaled. I finally let my truth speak. He reached across the table and held her hand. And your truth changed the summit, and many hearts. Reactions rippling outwards. Within the hour, Elena's snippet was trending online. Clips flooded every social channel, captioned with, Engineer dances her heart into her keynote, spellbinding. Elena Cho proves code is human. Tech plus art equals magic #Tech meets art. The summit feed buzzed. Attendees described her as breakthrough, inspiring, emblematic of our charge. Journalists quoted, she's not just bridging worlds, she's weaving them. Phone buzzes followed. Mentors, professors, recruiter DMs, all echoing the same sentiment. Opportunities invited her to lecture at international festivals, sign collaborations with major studios, and consult on human-centered tech design. But above all, she cherished texts from loved ones. Mom, your performance brought tears. You remind me, art and intellect can live together. Dad, proud beyond words. Grandma, that's my legacy. Quiet awe before life's next arc. Later, Elena stood on the rooftop terrace overlooking Seattle's skyline at dusk, lights flickering like code in the distance. She sipped jasmine tea, feeling a low hum of victory. Jeffrey stepped up beside her. He drained his glass and sighed happily. We did something rare today. She took his arm and looked out together. He nodded, eyes shining. And a new chapter begins. Sparkle's powerful closure. Elena's snippet was not only a brilliant finale, it was a powerful symbol. It validated her dual identity, dancer and engineer, united. It broke cultural expectations, showing that creative dreams can coexist with technical careers. It moved hearts, demonstrating that movement can speak when words fall short. It galvanized a community, inspiring future engineers artists to find their intersection. White heavy checkmark why this moment matters. Dramatically inspiring, the audience witnessed art become thesis, code animate emotion. Character triumph, Elena owned both her identities, delivering powerful closure to her journey. Emotional resonance, her tears were proof of inner reconciliation, not plea for approval. Tangible impact, the summit's tone, and many lives, shifted in that 2-minute performance. Looking forward, it wasn't the end, it was the launchpad for her legacy at the intersection of technology and art. In the tranquil aftermath of the summit's crescendo, Elena found herself lingering on that rooftop terrace, the glowing Seattle skyline sprawling before her like a sea of code and possibility. The city lights flickered like tiny sparks, each one symbolizing choices made, steps taken, and truths unveiled. Beside her, Jeff gently squeezed her hand as she leaned into him, drawing comfort from his steady presence. Silence enveloped them, not awkward, but loaded with meaning. Their shared breath, the quiet hum of life around them, felt like a gentle echo of the day's triumph. Elena's heart swelled with quiet pride. She had stood on stage, danced her truth, and revealed a world where artistry and engineering coexisted in harmony. And in doing so, she had reshaped not just her own identity, but inspired others to reconsider the ties that bind passion and profession. Passion isn't off-topic, it's the doorway. For years, Elena had whispered to herself, "You can't be both." Her rigorous software degree demanded logic and structure. Her hidden ballet life thrived in grace and spontaneity. In their worlds, they were separate, if not opposed. But that night, as her bare feet brushed the stage boards and her limbs traced arcs of emotion, she realized her mistake. Passion isn't off-course, it's the doorway. Ballet wasn't an escape from engineering. It was the lens that slowed down time, sharpened her intuition, and ignited creativity in her code. She remembered late nights, her reflection in the mirror while she practiced plies after debugging loops. She recalled the tension in her thighs when she balanced on point hours after solving a complex algorithm. That interplay, the meticulous structure of ballet against the fluid lines of code, taught her to think beyond syntax and frameworks. She discovered that creative problem-solving emerged not from discipline alone, but from integrating emotional intelligence with technical prowess. On stage, that lesson crystallized. Passion amplifies potential rather than distracting from it. When heart and mind meet, perfection emerges. In the days that followed, Elena sifted through messages from attendees, tech experts, dancers, professors, all praising what she had achieved with those 2 minutes. Many noted that her performance had distilled a rare truth. Elena didn't just dance. She coded emotion. She showed us the architecture of feeling. Yes, when heart meets mind, perfection emerges. And here's the nuance. Perfection doesn't mean flawlessness or being a genius in every domain. It means crafting something whole. Engineering without empathy can be empty, artistry without structure can flounder. But together, they form something deeply resonant, meaningful, beautiful. Elena recognized in that moment that her journey wasn't about being perfect in both ballet and software. It was about uniting them. It was about trusting that this duality adds richness and clarity to her work. Broader ripples, impact over prestige. Many had expected Elena to frame her success as a rebellion, defying her immigrant parents, choosing art over engineering. But she hadn't chosen one at the expense of the other. She had expanded the canvas of what success could look like. That's when she realized, it's not about prestige, it's about impact. The summit sponsors had approached her about developing workshops that integrated movement with UX design. Tech foundations offered grants for embodied coding research. Dance companies inquired about using motion capture to enhance choreography. She was becoming a bridge across communities, not by seeking attention, but by serving purposefully, by demonstrating that combining creative and technical skill unleashes deeper human connection. She thought of the little girl who would come home from show and tell, asking her mom, "Can I be a coder and dance?" Elena's example became a living answer. Identity isn't a line, it's a tapestry. The year leading up to the summit had been tinged with insecurity. She'd hidden her ballet shoes in her closet. She'd feared that revealing both identities would suggest she'd been faking. She had listened to the voice that said, "You're deviating from tradition." But that night on stage, she learned that identity isn't a straight line. It's a tapestry woven with many threads. Each thread, whether code, choreography, late-night debugging, or early morning plies, had its own texture. Together, they wove the strongest, most authentic version of herself. Elena felt gratitude for every demanding exam, every blistered foot, every critiqued draft. Without them, the tapestry would be incomplete. Courage is chained to compassion. What remained most poignant was the memory of her parents, tears glistening under the stage lights, a mixture of shock and pride as their daughter danced the engineer. Elena realized that courage is chained to compassion. She had dared to perform publicly not to shame or rebel against her parents, but to demonstrate what lives beneath their caution. She recognized her parents' fears, rooted in a wish for her stability, security, tradition. And so, she had opened a path that didn't close doors, it invited them in. In acknowledging both her hearts, she gave them permission to hold her fully without losing face. In time, they began attending her ballet rehearsals and applauding her software developments, because they knew she was whole. Courage, she now knew, lived at the intersection of bravery and kindness, not confrontation, but invitation. As evening gave way to deep night, Elena stepped away from the terrace rail. She breathed in the cool air, the distant sound of ferry horns drifting across the water. Her phone buzzed, an email from a school district requesting a Dance Plus Coding pilot for underserved youth. Another ping from a renowned art tech fellowship that wanted her to design motion-driven interfaces. She smiled, her heart full. She understood now, she didn't need to choose. She had crafted a new space, one where young people wouldn't face her dilemma of suppression. She would be the one who said, You can be both. She turned her gaze from city lights to stars overhead. Somewhere twinkling beyond those offices, scripts, and dancers lived countless voices, dreamers who could now hear a new narrative, one where weaving heart and mind creates something rare and needed. When Elena Cho stepped off the stage at the National EDU Tech Conference, the applause still echoed in her ears. She scanned the sea of faces, educators, technologists, parents, and even a few of her former ballet classmates who had traveled from Seattle to see her. She held the most innovative crossover award in one hand and joy in the other. 12 months earlier, CodeBallet was nothing more than a spark, a seed of an idea scribbled in her notebook during a late-night study session. Between debugging code and practicing arabesques, she had dreamt of bridging her twin passions. After the summit performance went viral, a swirl of interest followed. Educators reached out. Investors took note. Mobility startups expressed curiosity about integrating UX and motion, and parents asked how they, too, could help their children learn through body language, rhythm, and logic. Handshake from idea to impact. Elena's living room became CodeBallet's first office. Piles of textbooks interspersed with dance shoes, sticky notes of wireframes, and her laptop open to Zoom tuitions. She worked tirelessly, often pacing the room with her laptop strapped on a dance harness, testing prototypes of motion tracking lessons. Her partner Jeff, now CFO, managed the finances late into the night. She hired a small team, a former robotics engineer skilled in motion sensors, a kindergarten teacher who understood pedagogy, and a UX designer passionate about interaction. They piloted the app in local after-school programs. Kids aged 6 to 10 learned to write simple Python code by mimicking arm movements, loop your arms like a swirl, condition, stand in arabesque, function jumps. Within weeks, teachers noticed improvements, not just in coding fluency, but in student confidence and creativity. A kid who had once hated math was now excited for class, smiling as they danced the algorithm. Another child, previously shy, led a group dance code session for parents. Soon, news outlets picked up the story. Spurred by early success, CodeBallet secured a seed round from an edtech incubator. They refined the platform based on feedback, adding accessibility features, voice cues for visually impaired users, and language options for non-English speakers. They partnered with community centers in Chicago, Seattle, and Los Angeles. Elena traveled frequently, presenting at education summits in small towns and Fortune 500 headquarters alike. She delivered a TEDx talk titled Coding Through the Body, Empathy Meets Algorithms, which received over 1 million views. Tweets circulated. Elena Cho is reimagining how kids learn to code through dance and delight. Finally, an app that understands both art and engineering. On the evening of the EDU Tech Gala, Elena stepped onto the red carpet alongside Jeff and her team. Cameras flashed as they entered a grand ballroom filled with industry leaders. When the host announced Most Innovative Crossover, Elena's breath caught. She knew they were being recognized not only for CodeBallet's technology, but for synthesizing art, science, and humanity. On stage, she cradled the award, tears glistening. She began. CodeBallet was born because I refused to erase parts of myself. I'm an engineer because I love solving problems. I'm a dancer because I feel alive when I move. I stand here tonight because these two worlds don't have to compete, they can enrich each other. If CodeBallet encourages just one child to believe they can both think systematically and feel deeply, then it's been worth every late night, every line of code, every pirouette in my living room. The crowd rose, standing ovation echoing across the hall. That night became a turning point. CodeBallet's user base soared. Schools adopted it, nonprofits sponsored student access, even rehabilitation centers used it to teach movement and coordination. Elena traveled to remote Native American tribes, helping run a workshop where elders watched kids dance code, and the entire community cheered. She remembered that first ballet recital in secret, the shame she'd feared, and saw now in every child who dared to dance in public, logic and movement reflected in their lit eyes. Her parents, invited to the gala, watched from a corner. When she finished speaking, they approached and hugged her, long, wordless, profound. Their pride glowed brighter than any spotlight. Now, late at night in her new office overlooking a skyline of glass and cranes, Elena sometimes pauses. She touches the award on her shelf, engraved not just with code and dance, but with two hearts intertwined. Her startup was more than a business. It was a testament to the power of living fully. A beacon for those who have been told they must choose, and a challenge to society that depth is not divided, but multiplied. She once thought passion might be a distraction. Now she knew it was the foundation. As she closes her laptop and turns off the lights, she hears a memory, her father's proud whisper, "You showed me what I didn't know I could hope for." She smiles. Because now, through CodeBallet, she offers that hope to every child who dreams of dancing and digital, of art and architecture, of heart and mind. She built a bridge across worlds, and in doing so, created a path for others to follow. Elena Cho, engineer and ballet dancer, yes, but most of all, architect of a new tomorrow.